Okay, good morning. Welcome back to another vid. So you may have noticed, I'm hoping you didn't, but you probably did. I uploaded my Friday brew 2 weeks ago, well, a week and a half ago, on time, every other Friday, and it was up for less than 24 hours, and I pulled the vid. Now, it's ridiculous in hindsight. I kind of announced it on Twitter. Oh, I'm having a break. It's ridiculous. I say on Twitter. It wasn't on my feed, but I was talking to a few other people. Like, you know, I talked about it at length, and via PM with one or two people, and on Facebook. And then a few days go by, and of course, it's like, why did I do that? I was just going through a funny 5 minutes where I just wasn't feeling it. And when you've been making vids as long as I have, 7, 8 years, then that feeling comes along every now and again. Feeling a little bit disillusioned, and I just should have just kept my mouth shut, not said a thing. But yeah, so I uploaded the vid, and in that vid, it had a few negative kind of topics. I mean, I was fine through it. I think if you've watched it, a big if, because it was only up 24 hours. But if you did watch it, or if you go back and watch it, it's just me. I'm just being me. But I talked about a few negative topics, such as me not really feeling the whole gaming thing right now. Not as much as I have been anyway, in years gone by. Selling collections came up. Politics came up as well towards the end, one of the questions that was asked. So it was quite heavy, and I think it maybe gave off some negative kind of vibes, I guess. And this is ridiculous because I always preach about having tough skin. I always say that to people. You've got to have tough skin to make vids because comments are going to come in that you're not going to like, dislikes and all that kind of stuff. And even though the video was up for less than 24 hours, about 21, 22 hours, if we want to be precise, it was going well. There was 17 likes, no dislikes. I don't usually get any, or not many anyway. So that didn't surprise me. Wait and see, there'll be a stack now for me saying that. But it won't mean anything, as I always say. But yeah, so it was going really well. 17 likes, a few comments came in, and I replied to one of the comments, and I refreshed the page, and it went, I think it was either 5 or 6, I can't remember, might have been more. Dislikes had arrived within the space of 30 seconds. So what the hell is this? Where have these come from? It was obscene. Now, obviously it must be one person doing it. That can't be 5, 6, 7 people. I think it was 6, but whatever the number was, it can't be that many people all within the space of a minute disliking it. That's ridiculous. It was obviously one person with one of these kind of bot things. I've seen how they work on YouTube. You put in the amount of likes or dislikes you want it to give, and then it does it on the video that you're watching. And I just thought, that is so ridiculous. But because I was in that kind of mind frame, where it was like, oh, I'm thinking of taking a bit of a break, and my channel direction, all that kind of stuff, I just momentarily kind of snapped, I guess, and I thought, that's it. And I just went through all my last videos, last 5 or 6 that I've made this year, made them private, and I thought, that's it, done with it. For a while, just a hiatus. I wasn't going to close the channel or completely disappear. And like I say, a few days go by and you're like, that was ridiculous. You've got to rise above it. So, yeah, I'm rising above it. That was ridiculous. So learn from my mistake there. And yeah, if you get negativity, which you will get, unfortunately, on YouTube, rise above it, ignore it, block, delete, move on. Just laugh at it and, you know, it'll be fine eventually. Don't worry about it. So if you've not watched that vid, please feel free to go back and watch it. I will, if I've got things to talk about, I guess, make another brew on Friday. If not, it may be the week after. But either way, they'll resume as per normal because I've got off to a good start this year. They've been every other week, so it's going well. So that is that. Now, the main point of this video is to talk about sort of missed opportunities, but again, not in a negative way, in kind of a positive way. It doesn't bother me that these things didn't work out because life has turned out fine, obviously, and I'm happy. But it's about situations. But before I do, I've just got to share this with you because I've just got back around about 20, 25 minutes ago from the post office. And speaking of Twitter, I put that on Twitter just, well, a few minutes ago. So I was at the post office. Taking a few things there. Obviously, I wasn't just going in just for a laugh, for something to do. So I was talking to the postal clerk and just making some small chat and all the rest of it. And during which time, this woman comes in behind me. No one else was in there. And I didn't think anything of it. Obviously, she just stood in line until maybe about 10 seconds later. And she was chuntering away, muttering to herself under her breath. And I thought, well, that's obviously not normal. But she wasn't talking directly to me. So I just carried on talking to the guy and filling out all these forms or signing things because I had a stack of parcels and packages going everywhere, tracking numbers and that kind of stuff. So And as I'm doing it, she's continuing to mutter. The occasional word will kind of come out, and it is a bit weird. And I kind of look at the postal guy, and he sort of looks at me, and we're both like, it's a bit weird, but we don't say anything. Anyway, so I finish doing that. I get my receipt, and paid for it, say see you later to him, start to walk out. Just as I'm walking out, obviously she walks ahead. She steps ahead to the counter where I was, because it's her turn. And so naturally he's like, hi, how can I help? And she's like, 666. And I'm thinking, what the hell? And he's like, excuse me? And I kind of turn around and she's like, 666. And I'm thinking, this is freaky. And she's just repeating that constantly. And I'm picking up a pace and I'm thinking, I'm getting out of here. I didn't even turn around and look again. I thought, I'm gone. That's it. Open the door. Well, I didn't slam it, but shut it pretty firmly. I was out of there. Didn't look behind me, like I say. And but the thing is, it's America. And yeah, it happens everywhere. You get weirdos everywhere, obviously. But it happens all the time here. It pretty much every single day I will see someone or hear something ridiculous. Either see it myself, hear it myself, or hear from somebody. It's mad. I mean, it's great. You know, if I didn't like it, I wouldn't be here 10 years. You know what I mean? But it is a wacko country. It really is. But people, generally speaking, when you know them, like the average citizen is fine. You know, very, very friendly and stuff. I've never had any problems anyway. So that's all good. But it kind of made a little bit of sense because just before or as I was walking into the post office, I heard someone, like a passerby, tell someone else to F off and called them a freak or something like that. But I didn't think too much because it was outside, so I couldn't see. I just heard it. And then, like a minute or so later, that woman came in. So maybe that was the freak that person was talking about. Maybe not. And this post office is right next to like a charity shop. And I nearly went in there. I thought, what if they've got any old games or something? Or movies or CDs, vinyl. But I didn't, because every time I've been in there, it's been rubbish. But maybe I'll take the camera in there one day, but absolutely don't bank on it. So I just thought I'd share that. So anyway, yeah, missed opportunities. I don't know if the video is going to be called that, but that's essentially what it is. It's going to surround football, gaming, music, and journalism. And basically, I'm just going to talk about a few anecdotes, things that happened, opportunities which could have been there for me, but through whatever reason, laziness, that's kind of the pattern which emerges throughout this. That's definitely one of them. Laziness and putting my foot in it in another instance, which wasn't clever. So yeah, let's just talk about it. So we're going to start with football. Now, football is something I love. I love watching it. I'm not as into it as I used to be. I don't know if that's a combination of getting older, maybe, or living in America and being distanced from it, even though obviously, you know, we play the MLSs over here. And it's, of course, obviously, clearly, the dawn of the internet. So you can watch things live and even just highlights and all that kind of stuff. So that's fine. So maybe it's a combination of both those things. But I do still watch it occasionally. And, of course, especially when it comes to the old football, I love reminiscing and nostalgia. You know the drill. But I do still like the sport. I love the sport, really. But it's funny, these days I can look down at a squad of like a Premier League team, and without question, probably half of them, I don't know who they are. I don't know who they came from. But go back 20, 25 years, I could tell you where they came from, probably how much they were bought for, all their previous clubs. I knew everything. Because you do, I guess you're a kid and you've got all that time on your hands, haven't you? So, yeah, when it came to football, I used to play Sunday League from the age of like sort of 9, pretty much when we moved down to the Bournemouth area, 9 up until sort of 16, 17. And then afterwards I continued to play five-a-side, all the way up into my sort of early mid-20s, I guess. But obviously the five-a-side stuff was just with my friends, messing around, work teams, and all that kind of stuff. But the proper Sunday League in the Dorset Football Association, the leagues, that would have been from, like I say, approximately 9 years of age up until sort of 16, 17. And but that was kind of my standard. I never played for the county. There was talk of it at the time. That never happened. I played for the school team. But, you know, anyone can pretty much do that. And I did all right. You know, the kind of teams I was involved in, I played for Hamworth United. I mean, they're a proper team. They've got like a non-league team. I played for them. Hamworthy Royals as well was another one. There's one or two others. And Poole Town, who were a non-league team as well. Like a stack of teams, as I say. So, and some of our teams throughout the years were very, very good. You know, I had players playing with me, teammates, and we'd batter the opposition. You know, we really would. We'd be a very good team. But then, you know, conversely, I played in a couple of teams, or one in particular, where we were atrocious. And we were battered ourselves every week. We were just not very good. We had amazing team spirit, absolutely amazing team spirit. And we got on, we were all friends. Some of us went to the same school, others just maybe live near each other and stuff. But obviously we're all the same age, because it's all, you know, in age, it's age-appropriate teams that we're in. And, but we weren't a very good team. But anyway, so in 1992, there's a point of this. I'll fast get forward to the point quickly. So, 1992, you'll see a picture on the screen. It's a picture of an envelope, which I've kept all these years later. Now, I've got a pencil across my name there. The only reason that's there is because I put this picture on Twitter. Talk about Twitter all the time here. I put it on Twitter the other day, and I just didn't really want my name being out on Twitter. Now, my address, or my old address from 25 years ago or more, is still on there, of course, but so doesn't mean anything. And you'll notice the date, I think it's April of 1992. Now, April of 1992, Plymouth Argyle Football Club, you'll see at the bottom there. Peter Shilton, the legendary goalkeeper, England goalkeeper, record cap holder, had just taken over, I think, in February of 1992. Now, I had turned 13 or 14 in 1992 in March. So I realised that he'd been appointed player manager, big player. By this point, he was in his early 40s, 42, 43, but he was still playing and would do for another few years. And I thought, well, I'm going to send a letter to him. He's got a new job, and I'm going to ask for a trial. So I wasn't headhunted. I'm going to ask him for a trial and just see what happens. And I'll send him like some photographs of me playing for my team and our league positions, and I'll tell him the team, and I'll give him the address and the telephone number. I'll give him all the information. So maybe he might want to send some scouts out to watch me and all that kind of stuff. So long story short, he responds to the letter. Now, I don't actually have the letter anymore if I do it at my mum's house, but obviously there's the envelope. And basically the crux of the reply was, it's like, hi Alex, thank you very much. Sounds like you're a good player. Must have like talked myself up a little bit. And he says, and your team are doing very well. I can see from the standings, league positions, all that kind of stuff. He said, I may get some scouts sent out to watch you. I don't know if he was just being nice there or what. He said, but what I can do in answer to your question, i.e. me, can I come along for a trial? He said, yeah, by all means. He says, like I say, it looks like you're a decent player, scored a lot of goals, this, that and the other. He said, the only thing I'm going to have to say to you, though, is that you're going to have to pay for your own accommodation. We can't do that for everyone. And going to Plymouth as well, it would have been a fair amount of money. And I was just turned 14. So he said, by all means, yeah. He said, come on down. You can spend like a few days here. You can train with like the youth team and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, bloody hell, it's basically an open invitation to go to a professional football club and have a trial. I could have got in. I could have been a footballer. But I didn't. I didn't even take the opportunity up. Too lazy. I think what it was, obviously I was young, couldn't drive, quite obviously at 13, 14 years of age. And I think when I showed it to my mum, she was like, Plymouth? Gone all the way to Plymouth? So I think she wasn't too keen on doing that, or my dad for that matter. So I just kind of reluctantly just let it slide. But just imagine if, it's a big word, isn't it? But if I'd have gone to the trial, I could have, probably wouldn't have been, but I could have been signed up. I could have been a professional footballer. Didn't happen. Now, I also had a proper trial this time at AFC Bournemouth. But the thing I remember about that is that it wasn't really well arranged. It was at the club. It was at Kings Park as well, which is where Dean Court is. And there was a few of the players there. They were kind of watching us, and they were giving us tips and all that kind of stuff. And they were putting us into groups, and we were passing the ball and doing keepy-uppy and all headering back and forth. But it was really basic. I thought, this isn't much of a trial, like running around the lap and, having a few penalty shootouts and stuff. It just seemed like some kind of like summer camp. It didn't seem right. And I never did hear back. But at least that was more official, and I was asked to go to that. So, yeah, I must have had a modicum of skills behind me. But again, I didn't hear back from them. I think there's too many kids there. And they weren't watching us. They weren't scrutinising the groups. Like I say, they would kind of come over, watch us for a few minutes, and then go on over to the next group. And I can picture it like it was yesterday, and saying to a couple of these people, these other kids that were on the trial, I was like, well, how can they see how good we are? Because they're just walking off. And they'll come back in a few minutes, but they're not watching us. We could just sit down on our asses and just have a chat. It was pointless. So yeah, never got into Plymouth, never got into AFC Bournemouth, so was never obviously going to be a professional footballer. But the last football thing I'll say is, and it's a little bit, and I don't mean this to be a little bit sort of self-indulgent, but I feel I've got to say this, because it's quite a nice story. So, me as a footballer, it probably won't surprise you to hear that I was a little bit lazy. I was quite a lazy footballer. I was not, especially when I was younger. As I got older, it got a little bit different. But when I was younger, around about this age, 13, 14, 15, I would absolutely not get stuck into tackles. Not me. No, thank you. You can do that. I'm not getting dirty. No way. Just that's not happening to me. Didn't like doing that at all. And I hated headering the ball. I scored a couple of headers, but they were from literally 2 yards out in Sunday League. I can picture them both like it was yesterday. One of them, a friend of mine called Ollie, crossed it in, and it was literally on the line. And I jumped up under duress and kind of nodded it over. It probably would have went in. I nicked his goal, basically. And then the other one was at the same ground, actually. I can't remember the opposition. And someone had a shot, and the keeper kind of palmed it out. I was on the 6-yard box, maybe even 3 or 4 yards from the goal line. And he palmed it to me, and just instinct, I just headed it past him. It's like a goalmouth scramble, really. I think that was the only 2 times I headed the ball in my life, and it resulted in 2 goals. So I didn't like to do it because it hurt. Obviously, wasn't going to do that. But what I was, I don't mean this to sound, arrogant, and maybe you were way better than me. Who knows? But I'm just saying, I knew at the time. I knew I was a very technical player. I could spot a pass a mile away. I knew what I was going to do before I got the ball. I was always calling for the ball. I was really good at long-distance passes. I get a lot of kind of strength behind the ball. When it came to flicks and skills, if most people, you'd pass the ball to them and they'd either just stop it or they'd pass it on. With me, I always did something a little bit cocky, a little bit clever. I'd flick it up. There was no need to, but I'd flick it up, put it on my knee, and then pass it off. I'd always do something like that. I was a very technical player. And it just came naturally. I wasn't trying to show off. You've got to believe me when I say that. I wasn't trying to show off. I just did it automatically. It was just the way I played football. I do these little flicks, and I sometimes would aim for the crossbar and all that kind of stuff. It sounds very cocky, doesn't it? I just used to love the sound it made when it hit the crossbar. And the fact that everyone would be like, oh, it nearly went in. It's for some reason that kind of gave more or as much satisfaction as it did when it went in. It was kind of very strange. I remember George Best used to say stuff like that. I used to aim for the crossbar, not comparing myself to George Best. But a player who I did used to compare myself to, and if you're a football fan, you'll understand where I'm coming from, with doesn't like heading the ball, doesn't like tackling, but very technical, Matthew Le Tissier from Southampton. He spent his entire career at Southampton, played a few games for England. But if you're a football fan, you'll know he was a very good player, but a very lazy player. And he should have left Southampton, but he lived life on Easy Street. And he was happy there, I guess. He was captain. He was like the big fish in a small pond. Everybody loved him, Le God, as everybody called him. And he was a very, very good player, but he was lazy. I saw him live a number of times when we used to go to Southampton in the early, mid-90s. But I very much kind of based my game on him in the sense that I was very technical. But the nice thing, this is the point of the story. So one of the guys that I used to play football with, Sunday League, was called Graham, or it is called Graham. And there was a period in time of about a year or a year and a half, 2 years, where his dad and his mum would pick me up, along with maybe 1 or 2 other lads who were in our team. And he'd pick us up from our house, picture on the screen. And that picture, by the way, is courtesy of a YouTuber who's moved in just around the corner from where I used to live. I won't reveal his name just for privacy reasons, but that's that. So he'd pick us up from that house and take us to training and then drop us back or to the games and all that kind of stuff. So it was a real help because, my mum, well, I say she couldn't drive. She could drive, actually. But my dad usually had the car, but he was a policeman, still is. So working night shifts and stuff, my dad couldn't really take me to the football. So usually it would be like, someone's mum and dad would do it, like I say. So anyway, long story short, is anyone awake? Long story short, Graham's dad sadly passed away around about 3 years, 3 years, 2, 3, 4 years ago, something like that. And then shockingly, his mother died the following year. Talk about horrible. And it was sad. And I remember he put it on Facebook. And of course, when he showed that, everybody's like saying, "Oh, sorry, mate." Obviously now I was no different. I was like, "Oh, mate, that's terrible. I'm sorry to hear that. Your dad and mum used to be really good to me and to all of us, giving us lifts and all that kind of stuff." And that's really sad, mate. Thinking of you. What can you say? It's hard, isn't it? And he replied back to me and he went, he said, "Thanks, Alex." He says, "It's funny." He said, "I've never told you this." He said, "But maybe like a couple of years ago or whenever it was, obviously when his dad was alive, he said he was talking to his dad and they were reminiscing about when we used to play Sunday League football. And what they were doing is they were talking about some of their favourite players that they played with, or in his dad's case, watched play. And they were doing like a top 5 countdown, and they were kind of taking it in turns to name someone. And then when it got to their number 1 choice, you can see what's coming here, when it got to their number one choice, instead of just saying someone first, they wrote it down on a piece of paper and then kind of sort of held it out to each other. And both of them, without knowing, obviously, had both said I, in Graham's case, was the best player he played with. Technically, the most technical player, he said, that I played with. And his dad said I was the most technical player that he'd ever seen in our kind of youth system, youth setup, when we played youth team football. Too many mentions the word youth there. There's another one. And I thought that was really nice, because even though it sounds cocky, and I was quite a sort of a flash footballer with a little flicks and a little back heel and a volley, and scissors kicks. I'd do all those kind of things when I was in shape, and now I'm like 2.5 stone overweight. But I didn't do it to show off. Again, you've got to take my word for it. I didn't do it to show off. I just did it naturally. It's what I wanted to do. It was my way of expressing myself. And at no stage did I ever say to someone, hey, look at me, I'm really technical. It's just, no, not at all. I keep myself to myself, one of the lads, but I'm not going to show off, not at all. So the fact that I used to do that, and then the fact that other people noticed it without me kind of shouting from the rooftops, I thought was really nice. It's quite sad in a way, especially obviously that his dad passed away. But yeah, it was just a nice story when they both said it. I was like, oh man, that's really nice. Thanks for. It's sad, but really nice. So that was when I read that, it kind of put a smile on my face. It just goes to show that, like I say, you don't have to be flash, you don't have to be arrogant, you don't have to tell everyone you're the man. If you are the man, people will notice. So maybe that's the moral of that story. But anyway, I never did become a footballer. Couldn't be bothered to go to the trial at Plymouth, and slipped through the net at Bournemouth. But obviously, I was good enough. Clearly wasn't. So that's the football. Now let's move on to gaming. Now, I think I've told this story before. So there's a magazine at the time called Sega Pro. Sega Pro was published by Paragon. Was it Paragon? Or was it Future Publishing? I think it was called Future Publishing, which then morphed into Paragon Publishing. Either way, their headquarters in the mid-90s was in Bournemouth. So handy for me. Used to live there. Fantastic. So it was around about late 94, early 95. I'd finished school, but I was at college. And an opportunity came up. Now, I had a friend of mine called Rob. I've mentioned Rob many times. He's the one who used to have the Amiga 600. I'll probably mention him later on in the vid as well. But Rob worked, I don't know if it was at that time, but he certainly did latterly. He worked for Games TM. I think he may have worked for a Sega magazine before that. But Games TM was like kind of an early millennium kind of magazine, I think. Multi-format mag. And he was one of the art directors or whatever, I don't know the position he held. But in the back of the magazine, if anyone's got a copy of Games TM from like the early part of the millennium, look in the back, look for Rob Sullivan, and you'll see his name in there. So just to prove I'm not lying. Well, that doesn't prove anything, does it? I could have just got a magazine and read any name out. Just take my word for it. He's the same age as me. He's a mate of mine. So, and now he's just like a freelance. He does a lot of kind of art for all sorts of people, any clients really. So I don't know if that time he was working for Future or Paragon Publishing, whatever they were called at the time, in another job, of course, because this is before Games TM. But either way, I'd found out about this job that was going. Now, it wasn't to work for Sega Pro in the sense that I wasn't going to be a staff writer, but I was going to be working for the company, of course, in the same office that they were doing all the reviews and all that kind of stuff. I think it was something to do with like the printing side of things and binding the magazine and then working with the distributors to get it all collected and going in newsagents on time and subscriptions and all that kind of stuff. I can't quite remember, but it was something along those lines. So some of you may know that at that time, Dave Perry, the animal, i.e. from Games Master, he worked for Sega Pro and he worked at Bournemouth. And he's the guy who interviewed me at the time. So I walked in, suited and booted, 16, 17 years of age, probably looked a right mess. My kind of Brit poppy hair all over the place, and swagger and arrogance. And I walked in there, shook him by the hand, and he's like, right, Alex? I'm like, oh, thank you. I don't even think I said, all right, Dave, just very kind of civil and polite. And even though I just said I had a swagger, I think when it came to dealing with adults and stuff, I kind of, I was very kind of conscious of the fact. And it was an interview, and I kind of wanted to get it. So I remember, like it was yesterday, going through the head office, not the head office, the main office, and I could see two of the staff writers. Now, I forget the guy's name, but one of them I instantly recognised. Because you know how in old magazines what they do is they'd have the review, and then it'd have like a picture of the person doing the review. So Dave Perry, the animal, is pointing out these people's names. This will, you'll be working with these guys. And I remember them looking up and saying hi, obviously. And I pointed at him and I went, I recognise you. And he's kind of smiled and went, oh yeah, thanks, kind of thing. Stardom, recognised at last. Made a joke of it, of course. And I thought, how cool would that be? I'm going to be working in an environment where, the reviewers are doing their stuff. The TVs were there, or the monitors, they were playing the games that they were reviewing for the mags. I thought this was amazing. Now, of course, I had no interest in the printing side of things, but I was viewing it as a kind of a step in the door, a foot in the door, if you like, step in the door, a foot in the door. Who knows what could have happened in the future? That's how it works, isn't it? Just by chance, by word of mouth, just getting your foot in the door and working your way up. So that was definitely my aim. I was very much viewing this as I could be a staff writer. And I remember Dave himself saying at the time, he said, this is what you'll be doing. He said, but sometimes we need help on the mag. And, if you play games, and I said I did, and I told him what systems, the Mega Drive at the time was what I was using. Still had my ST. In fact, I had my Amiga by that point. And he was like, oh, great, so you know your stuff. I was like, yeah. Anyway, so the interview was going fine. We went into this other office, his office, I guess. Long kind of table, like the one from bloody Star Wars, where Darth Vader was at the other end. It's quite intimidating, really. And you know what Dave Perry's like with his bandana on and all that kind of stuff. But the interview went fine. I thought it did anyway. And it got all the way to the end. I remember one specific part. Dave said to me, he said, have you got a PC? And no, I didn't, but I told him I did. I went, oh, yeah. He said, which one is it? I went, oh. I said, it's the that latest one. I was talking bollocks. And he said something like, the 486. I'm just throwing numbers out now. And I went, yeah, that's the one. Yeah, he went, oh, that's a good one. Yeah, it seems pretty good. He went, what programs do you use? I thought, oh, my God. I went, oh, and he went, Word or something like that. I'm like, yeah, I use that one. I mean, he must have known I was talking bollocks. But I somehow kind of clawed it back because I remember going, well, to be fair, I said, it's my dad's computer. I'm just getting used to it. So I thought, if I say that, he's not going to quiz me because it's my dad's. So, but my dad didn't have a computer, so I was talking bollocks, just lying. But anyway, that aside, the interview was going really, really well. I said everything right. I think I was at the right age, 17, I think I was at the time, 16, 17, whatever. So, a good, nice early age where it could be my first job or would have been my first proper job. And, and working in the gaming industry, technically, that would have been brilliant. But it got right to the end of the interview, and Dave Perry's literally there kind of, writing a few things, probably just making some notes to himself, saying whether the interview went well or not. Who knows? Probably didn't. And I, in my infinite wisdom, thought, well, it's gone a bit quiet. And it had only gone quiet for about 10, 20 seconds. So I thought, well, I'm going to say something just to kind of fill the air. Maybe I was a bit nervous. There was no need for me to say anything, and I said the worst possible thing. And I just remember sort of sitting back and going, got to picture the scene. So I'm just sitting there in silence. He's writing a few things. He was about to finish. All I had to do was shut up for 5 seconds. But I just went, yeah. I said, Sega Power. I said, brilliant magazine. And he kind of, like a movie, he kind of looks up, stops writing, but the pen's still in his hand. He's like, Sega Power. I'm like, yeah. I said, it's a brilliant magazine. He said, not Sega Pro. I went, no, not Sega Pro. I said, Sega Power's the one to read, not Sega Pro. Bloody hell, what a load of rubbish that is. And he went, this is Sega Pro. Sega Power is our rival. And I thought, oh my God. And I instantly kind of retracted it. I went, oh, no, yeah, sorry, I knew that. So I just got it the wrong way round. It was too late. I'd put my foot in my mouth, too late. And almost straight away, he kind of stood up and went, well, thank you for coming, Alex. Thank you very much. We'll be in touch. And I thought, I do not believe it. Kind of proper kind of, just my head there, my hands. I was like, I do not believe what happened. And I remember walking out, going down. I think they had a lift, actually. I think they had a lift in the building. But either way, went down in the lift, all the stairs, whatever it was. And I instantly knew I'd ballsed it up. I was not going to get that job because I just, to his face, to the animal, I just told him that his magazine is bollocks and I read his rival. But I didn't mean that. I meant to say the other way around. I meant to say it was Sega Pro that I loved, obviously. So I absolutely cocked that up big time. So there we are. I could have been working for Sega Pro. I mean, the magazine only lasted about a year after that anyway. But still, I think Future Publishing, did they go on and make the Edge stuff? No, well, maybe it was the Games TM. I can't remember. But who knows? I could have gone from Sega Pro to Games TM. I could still be in the industry today, but balls that up. So balls the football up, balls the gaming up, and that was that. The next one I talk about, now this isn't really a massive opportunity as such. It's more of maybe a slightly missed opportunity with friends more than anything else, but it's music. Now, I've played the guitar since, you can probably see one behind me. I've got a couple of guitars, actually. In fact, I've got a couple as well in the UK. I don't know, I point there like it's behind me. But yes, I've been playing the guitar since I was like 15. But I started to pick it up at the age of like 4 or 5, really. Strumming away, not really knowing what I was doing. And of course, by the time the early mid-90s come around, as I touched upon, I was massively into that Britpop music and the scene and the look and the style. And it was what dominated my musical earbuds. That's what I listened to. I listened to a lot of other stuff, of course, but that was the main scene I was into at the time. That was the main scene that was dominating for most kids around about my age, of course. It's the mid-90s. And I had a few friends that were in bands. Rob, who I mentioned before, he was in a band. Well, I was in a band. I think briefly he was in a band, but he certainly played the guitar. And once or twice, I'd go around his house. I remember a couple of times as well, where we went around someone else, like a mutual friend's house, and they had like an annex, like a garage, and there was a drum set in there, and a few of us would kind of pick up the instruments and we'd jam, but we didn't really know what we were doing. We never got as far as like a band name, or we didn't even write songs. We just messed around. We talked about doing something, but we never did. But the closest I came to actually being in a band would have been my best friend at the time. It's not that he's not a great friend now, just obviously not spoken to him or seen him for years. Spoke to him just the other month, actually. But clearly in America, not seen him for a long, long time. But so that was Sam, and his brother as well, Tom, a very good friend of mine. And so they were in a band at the time, and the band they were in was called Lounge. And I believe they were signed by a very, very minor kind of record label. So nothing big, they didn't get loads of money, but they were doing a lot of gigs at the time. And I remember Sam gave me a copy on cassette of their latest kind of demo cassette, I guess, which they were sending out to maybe record companies or wherever else. And I listened to it, and I thought, maybe through jealousy, that the singer was rubbish, but the songs were actually not too bad under the circumstances, for the most part. But I do remember, I'm not going to lie, I do remember being quite offended that Sam, being my best friend, he hadn't even asked me, hey, do you want to be in a band? I play the guitar, I'm into that kind of scene, I'm into that kind of music. He knew I wrote songs. They'd have been dreadful, obviously. We'd play the guitar together when I went round his house or when he came round my house. We'd occasionally write something, but it was never serious. But he never asked me to join a band. It came up once or twice, like, hey, how about, should we maybe do it? And I guess I kind of went, yeah, maybe, but I didn't push him on it. So maybe I gave him the impression I wasn't interested. So maybe it's partially my fault. And then he went off and he was in another band. They were called Gertrude Storm. That's the other band he was in. And they had this female, I think there was a female character, a female front vocalist, front woman. But she was such a character. It was really weird. I mean, she seemed quite nice in a way, but she was one of those people where she thought she was a star before she was a star. Do you know what I mean? She was a character. And when you talk to her, she would talk to you in her character. Now, if that works and she goes off and becomes famous, then you can look back and go, oh yeah, you could tell she was going to be a star because she was always like that when she was like a nobody. But of course, she didn't become a star. So she just looked a weirdo. It just looked like someone trying to be someone they weren't. She was always in character. And it was just, I could see through it straight away. It was just silly. And so, yeah, again, maybe jealousy's kicking in there. But I was never asked to join that band. And it's a shame because I think I really would have liked to have joined a band back then. I think we'd have been all right. I'm not saying we'd have been successful. I mean, how delusional am I sounding? I could have been a footballer. I could have been a rock star. But I'm just saying I think I could have wrote some good stuff because I remember at the time I was writing a lot of songs. I had a song in particular called The Red, the White and the Blue. In fact, like there it is, the flag, like the British flag. It was based kind of on the flag. Not so much on the flag as such, but the red, white and the blue being the colours. And Britpop and it being big and all the rest of it. And I'm not going to sing it to you. You can absolutely forget it. Maybe one day. But I remember, I think the lyrics were the red, white and the blue. You don't half feel the shame. The red, the white and the blue. And then something about when you're standing in the rain. It was bollocks. It was really, really bad. But the tune was quite catchy. Think of it like a very, very poor man's Oasis kind of song, like a B-side. That's basically what it was. But yeah, I vividly remember that. The red, the white, and the blue. You don't half feel the shame. Unbelievable. I don't half feel the shame now. I'll tell you what. That's bloody embarrassing. But yeah, I had a stack of songs, and most of them would have been absolutely appalling. But it never happened. I never did join a band. But I come from a musical family. I mean, my dad, believe it or not, had a cassette which was released on a very, 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 again, minor label in the early 80s. And he continued to, and still does, to record things. He's been on local radio relatively recently and doing a few performances and gigs. He'll always go to these like open mic things. Yeah, he's constantly recording things. He's shot a few videos over the years. I mean, I'm not going to put any up. So that's his thing. My dad's not into football. Football was always my thing. My dad's thing is music. It's his main kind of thing, you know. So yeah, so he loves that. So he never quite made it, clearly. My cousin, actually, funnily enough, lives in America and has done for 25 years. I think he's been back to the UK once in that time. Again, he's not had any massive success, but he's recorded videos by himself, well, with other people, of course, and paid for it, and very, very minor deals and gigs and all that kind of stuff. And of course, as I like to say, even though it's not a direct relation, my uncle's cousin was the drummer in Primal Scream. So, and he was in a punk band with Morrissey and the guitarist from The Cult, Billy Duffy. And he worked on a number of other projects. So yeah, if you're into Primal Scream and you like the albums Give Out But Don't Give Up, is that what it's called? I think so. And then the next one, which was Screamadelica, he was a drummer on those albums. I've got both those albums, actually. So it's a little bit of a claim to fame. He's the best drummer in Manchester. That's what I always say, or one of them anyway. But yeah, so music never took off. I could have been a musician, but I was too ultimately lazy to do it. So, and gaming as well, didn't really do that. And then last but not least is journalism. Now, going back to the very early part of the millennium, I think we got the internet in around about 1999, late 1999. So around about the very early part, 2000, 2001, I would do some reviews or send some articles, freelance if you like. I didn't get paid for it, actually, to these football websites. Football articles about, you know, nostalgic stuff as well as current affairs that are happening within football anyway. And one of the websites, I believe, was called the Football Terrace. I don't think it's around anymore, but I stand corrected. I remember last night having a quick look for it and I couldn't see it. But I also remember trying to look for it about 5 or 6 years ago and it wasn't there then. So maybe it was one of the very early kind of football, kind of fans' voices kind of thing when it came to websites. And there's a few other websites as well that I would contribute to. I don't ever recall getting any money. Maybe I did like a few quid, but I don't think I ever did. But for 2 or 3 years, I would regularly, like I say, upload these articles, essentially, and contribute to websites. The only thing I ever stipulated that was part of my deal is you have to, or they had to, put my name on the article and my email address, because I didn't want anyone else getting the credit for it. What I wanted, in theory, was how delusional. I wanted people to read it and think, oh, that was really good. Oh, it's obviously by Alex at that email address. I'll send him an email and offer him a job, which never happened. Of course it didn't. So yeah, I contributed to these websites, to Football Terrace and 1 or 2 others. I remember speculatively sending emails to all the newspapers at the time, or the big ones anyway, to World Soccer Magazine. The editor replied to me, Gavin Hamilton, I think his name is, and he was like, well, thanks, Alex. He says, those articles you've written are pretty good. He says, but we like to go through this specific channel when we get our reporters or, you know, people who work for the magazine, basically, journalists. He said, I think they had to go through a certain school or education. He was very specific. And it made me think, well, what's the point of that? Surely if someone knows what they're talking about and they come across well and you like their articles, then that's good enough. What difference does it make if they got like an A in this subject, an A in history? Who cares? You know, but that was, I guess he wanted the cream of the crop when it came to candidates. And I didn't get an A in history and all that. I got a C in history. Oh, bloody hell. So, yeah, I wrote to him and he replied with that. It was a nice reply. But again, I was a bit naive. I was just expecting him to say, oh, great article, do you want a job? was never going to work. So I did that. I wrote off to like the BBC. And what I did when I was, here's a little tip for you if you're thinking about doing this, because it sort of somewhat worked. I didn't just send one email. I would spam email these guys. I'd send the same email, copy and paste job. I'd send the same email to like the customer service department, to like the sorting department if it was like publications and stuff. I'd send it to like the secretary. I'd send it any email address that I could find. My email was going to them. It didn't bother me. Mass emails were going out, just click of a button, spamming them, like I say. And the thinking was, and I'd put a little line in there in the email, and I'd be like, apologies if this isn't, for you, but if you know which relevant department it's for, then, please forward it to them, kind of thing. I'd always do that. Anyway, so I sent it to all these people. A few newspapers replied. I don't recall which ones, but they were basically all, thank you very much. We've got your articles on and your resume on file. If anything crops up, we'll get in touch with you. The usual stuff. Rejection letters, essentially. But one person did positively reply, and I don't remember the guy's name, but he was the guy from The Sun newspaper. So really, if anybody was going to reply, you'd want The Sun to reply, because The Sun back then was the biggest newspaper in the land. Now, obviously, these days, The Sun has got a terrible reputation. It really has. Some of the headlines they use, it's really, really bad. They've sunk to new depths in recent years. And even going back to like the 80s, they were pretty bad. But they were still the biggest selling and most popular newspaper. So The Sun, this guy replies to me, and he's like, hi Alex, thank you for the email. He says, I've read your articles. I said, I like them. I've looked at the links you've sent me. I've looked at your resume. He says, I'm impressed. He says, whilst I can't directly offer you a job, just off the bat of an email, he said, I've got a suggestion for you. He said, how about, he says, you come and you spend 2 weeks work experience at the Sun headquarters, which would have been in London, and he said, we'll maybe get you to do a few articles, maybe, hang out with like some of the journalists, with us. He said, and you'll see how it works, you'll get a feel for it, and we can kind of go from there. He said, the only stipulation, the only thing I've got to say is, unfortunately, I can't pay your transportation or your accommodation. He says, but in terms of dinner and lunch and stuff at the, at work, fine. But, you're going to have to get here, you're going to have to get back, and that's up to you how you want to do that. He says, but give me a shout if you're interested, and we'll go from there. And you can guess what happened next. I couldn't be bothered. I just thought it was too much hassle. What a missed opportunity. I could have. And yeah, all right, it would have been work experience, but I believe you me, I would have gone out of my way to have got a job. I'd have made the tea. I'd have got on with people. If they'd treated me like a dickhead, I'd have been, absolutely, yeah, I'll kiss your feet, whatever you want. I just wanted a job. You've got to, haven't you? You've got to do what people say. You've got to be keen. You've got to be a bit of a job's worth. You've got to do that. Even if you don't really want to, you've got to show that you want to. Do you know what I mean? You've got to show that you care, even though you don't. But what it came down to was the fact that, living in Bournemouth, London was the best part of a couple of hours away. And I'd have had to have got the train down there. And, yeah, an hour and a half to 2 hours. But that would have meant setting off at like kind of 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:30. So I'd be getting up at like 5. And I'd have been knackered. I'd be coming back at 5 in the rush hour, albeit on, on the train. But then again, another 2 hours, I'd be getting back at like 7 at night, 7:30. And I just thought I couldn't really do that. Now, in hindsight, if that opportunity kind of presented itself to me now, well, maybe not where I'm at in my life now, but, if it happened again, maybe, I probably would have done it. I maybe would do it now, but, well, obviously not in America, but you know what I mean? If I was older and a little bit, if I'd have thought it through, but I thought it's too much hassle and I'll be knackered, and I just didn't reply to the guy's email. Lazy. So I could have been a footballer, but I slipped through the net, and I couldn't be bothered to turn up for the trial at Plymouth. I could have worked in the gaming industry as a journalist. I could have done, if I'd have, pursued that, if I hadn't have put my foot into it and told Dave Perry I read his rival magazine, which I didn't even do. It was just a slip of the tongue. I could have, if I'd have just said something, joined a band, formed a band. There's no guarantees it would have been a success, but at least I could have tried. But I was too shy to say anything and too lazy to suggest anything. I do remember reading a few ads in the back of like the NME. May even have replied to one or placed one or two. I can't quite remember. But nothing ever came of it. Lazy. And then, of course, the journalism essentially offered a position of sorts at the Sun newspaper, the biggest paper in the land. and I couldn't be bothered to turn up. Absolutely unbelievable. But you know what? In all honesty, it doesn't bother me whatsoever. It really doesn't. Because life has turned out well. You know, I'm in America, I'm married, I'm happy, you know, I'm making YouTube vids. Oddly enough, making YouTube vids about football, about gaming, about music, and then that's kind of surrounding journalism as well, isn't it? Social media. So in a way, it's kind of come full circle, and I'm doing it. And with gaming as well, I did end up working for Electronics Boutique. So I kind of experienced working within the gaming industry of sorts, albeit obviously just in a computer game shop. So I did that in like the late 90s. So no regrets. I wouldn't change anything. But it just goes to show, doesn't it, that sometimes these opportunities come along that you seek. You're individually seeking these interests out that you want to do. And then when you're given an opportunity to do it, where someone's basically saying, yeah, okay, come along and do it. And then you turn around, even though you want to do it, and you're like, actually, I can't be bothered. Laziness. So I'm not expecting any video responses, but if you've gone through anything similar in life, if you've had any crazy opportunities that have come along, and for whatever reason, you just didn't take it. Maybe you had a change of heart. Maybe you went for the interview and you wanted it, but you didn't get it. And maybe you were overconfident. Maybe, like me, you said the wrong thing. Or maybe you just couldn't be bothered. Or maybe just decided it wasn't for you and you wanted to do something else. So if you've got any stories, then obviously, please feel free to do a video response. But I'm not expecting anyone to do that. But if you want, it's entirely up to you. Anyway, until my next vid, which I'm guessing will probably be the Friday brew. If it's not on Friday, which it should be, but if it's not, it'll be the Friday afterwards. But like I say, if you haven't seen my other one, because it was only up for 20 hours, 22 hours, then please feel free to go back and watch that. And yeah, you might enjoy it, you might not. But until my next vid, thank you for watching. I'll see you later.